You need to see how your plans for retiring abroad could impact your CPP and your OAS benefits. We're going to answer two critical questions that I've been asked a lot in the comments. Can you live outside of Canada and collect CPP and OAS? And do you lose your CPP and OAS if you move out of Canada? Now, whether you're considering a retirement in a new country or you're simply curious about the implications, stay tuned. I'm here to hopefully provide some clarity and help you make informed decisions about your retirement plans, even if it means retiring in another country. Let's get after it. In today's video, we're going to answer some of the questions that I've had in my comments section of my previous videos about CPP and OAS. Specifically, do you lose your CPP and OAS if you move out of Canada? And can you live outside of Canada and collect your CPP and OAS? But before I share the answers to those great questions, you might be wondering who I am and why should you even listen to me? Well, my name is Joe and I'm from IA Private Wealth and IA Private Wealth USA. And there are literally thousands of unlicensed or unregistered financial influencers on YouTube providing some sort of financial guidance in their content. The problem is that the vast majority of these finance influencers aren't legally registered to give advice on financial concepts, but in a lot of cases they do. Here's how I'm different. I'm a fully registered fiduciary portfolio manager and investment advisor, registered in 7 Canadian provinces with CIRO and in Texas with the SEC in the United States. My content tends to have a higher level of trust associated with it because I'm registered to be able to provide advice with the securities commissions in both Canada and in the US. And with those registrations comes strict regulatory standards that I must adhere to. This helps ensure that I share the most reliable information on financial planning and retirement strategies on both sides of the border. That said, as trusted as my content is, you should always make sure that you consult with your portfolio manager or financial advisor before making any financial decisions about anything that you see on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, I want to take a quick moment to thank you all, as I am very, very close to the 1,000 subscriber milestone on my Canadian channel. Please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It supports the videos tremendously and helps us reach many more viewers. Thanks in advance for your support. Also, if you're from the US or have cross-border needs, I am a cross-border advisor, and you can feel free to check out my affiliate channel at Joe Macek USA for US retirement planning content. Okay, now on to our video. So, can you still receive CPP and OAS benefits if you move out of Canada? The short answer is yes, and you do not lose your CPP and OAS if you move out of Canada. But there are some pretty cool nuances that you need to know, and it's important that you watch to the end because there's a few important pieces of information that you might find valuable about the OAS clawbacks. So make sure to stay tuned to the end. With that said, I have done several great videos on CPP and OAS, and I've covered these plans extensively in other videos. So I'm not going to go into all the details here, but it's important to understand that CPP and OAS are different plans that work differently. CPP is a pension fund. OAS, on the other hand, is a social program. CPP is different as it's a plan that you and your employer contribute to, likely for many years, building up your savings for retirement. OAS, once again, is a social program. It's money that is distributed to Canadians based on how long you've been a resident of Canada, not how much you put into it. It generally provides a basic income to Canadians aged 65 and older, and again, it's funded each year by taxes and government money, not from your individual contributions. For CPP, because you've contributed directly to the plan from your paychecks, you are entitled to receive those pension benefits no matter where you live. CPP survivor benefits and child benefits are also paid even if you're not living in Canada. These benefits travel with you wherever you go. Whether you qualify for survivor benefits or child benefits under CPP, such as benefits for children or disability benefits, you will continue to receive them abroad. However, the tax implications can vary significantly depending on your new country of residence and its tax treaty status with Canada. If you move to a country without a tax treaty, it's likely you will face a higher withholding tax rate of 25%. Many countries have tax treaties with Canada that reduce the withholding tax rate commonly to about 15%. And if you are curious about the country that you want to move to and whether or not it has a tax treaty with Canada, I will leave the links in the description below to help you identify some of these countries along with some other very helpful information you might want to see. That said, it's important to stay informed about the reporting requirements with both Service Canada and the tax authorities in your new country. In order to collect OAS abroad, you could be required required to file an annual tax return reporting your worldwide income, but we will touch on that later in the video. Now, CPP, as we have mentioned before, is pretty straightforward. OAS, on the other hand, is a bit more complex. OAS has specific residency rules that determine eligibility for benefits when living outside of Canada. To qualify for full OAS benefits while residing abroad, you must have resided in Canada for at least 20 years after turning 18. Now, it's important to note that this is very different from the 10-year requirement, which qualifies you for partial OAS payments, but requires residency within Canada to receive them. So to make it simple, if you lived in Canada for more than 10 years but less than 20 years, you would still qualify for partial OAS payments. However, in order to receive those partial payments, you will have to reside in Canada. Otherwise, you will not receive those benefits. Another important aspect of OAS residency is if you have lived outside of Canada but worked for a Canadian employer, such as the Canadian Armed Forces or the Canadian banks. According to the CRA website, Canadians working abroad for these types of employers may have their time spent working overseas counted as residents in Canada towards their 20-year minimum requirement for OAS eligibility. But on the CRA website, an example about Thomas, age 65, who lived most of his life in Austria but spent 16 years in Canada after turning 18. When he moved back to Austria to care for his parents, Thomas didn't initially qualify for an OAS pension outside of Canada because he hadn't lived in Canada for 20 years. However, Canada's Social Security agreement with Austria allowed his years in Austria to count towards the 20-year requirement. Now, Thomas will get a partial OAS pension for life. However, what's really important to note here is that the amount that he receives is not based on the 20 years qualification. It's based on the 16 years that he actually lived in Canada after age 18. This means that he gets 16/40ths of the full OAS pension. To be certain that your working years outside of Canada count towards your OAS residency requirements, it's essential to verify this with Service Canada. They can provide accurate information and guidance specific to your situation, helping ensure that you meet the necessary criteria to receive OAS benefits based on your employment history abroad. So what about the OAS clawback? Does it still apply if you move abroad? Well, the short answer is yes, it does, but it depends on the country you move to and whether Canada has a tax treaty with that country. The OAS clawback, officially known as the recovery tax, applies to those who earn over a certain amount each year and still applies even if you live in another country. However, if you move to a country that has a tax treaty with Canada, you might be exempt. This means that in some countries, you can earn as much as you want after age 65 without losing any of your OAS benefits to the clawback. Now, as I said earlier in the video, in general, to collect your OAS abroad, you are required to file an annual tax return reporting your worldwide income. So if you want the benefit, you'll need to let CRA know how much you're making and from where. As a non-resident senior receiving OAS, you might have to submit an old age security return of income form or OASRI form so that the CRA can determine if there needs to be any clawback. However, if you live in a country with a tax treaty with Canada, as I mentioned earlier, you might be able to bypass this requirement. Now, if you have a low income, you can apply to the government of Canada to adjust your withholding tax rates. If you're living in a country that doesn't have a tax treaty with Canada, you can also request a tax reduction by filing a specific form. This form is officially known as the application by a non-resident of Canada for a reduction in the amount of non-resident tax to be withheld, also referred to as the NR5 form. Once approved, the NR5 form is valid for 5 years, unless of course your income changes, and you will also need to file a tax return each year. Now, another avenue for low-income earners is that you can also file a Section 217 application form, which essentially allows a low-income non-resident to pay taxes as if they were a Canadian resident rather than a non-resident. Now, some of you might be wondering about GIS, and the Guaranteed Income Supplement provides additional financial assistance to low-income seniors in Canada. It offers very modest support, and due to the low-income restrictions, not everyone qualifies for it. However, just in case you were wondering, in order to receive GIS, you must reside in Canada as it's not available if you move abroad. The last kind of really cool detail I want to mention is that your benefits can be directly deposited into your bank account in the country where you're living and in its local currency. This is a significant advantage as it not only simplifies access to your funds, but also likely means a better exchange rate according to the CRA. In general, you won't have to worry about the hassle or fees associated associated with currency conversion. Plus, this virtually seamless transfer process helps ensure that you have a consistent and convenient access to your money, making your financial management abroad that much easier. This is definitely a sweet bonus to keep in mind when you're planning your retirement in another country. Here's the bottom line. Retiring abroad while receiving CPP and OAS benefits is entirely possible, but it comes with its own set of considerations and requirements. Your CPP contributions allow you to have a pension no matter where you live, but you need to understand the tax consequences and the residency rules for OAS and make sure you meet the necessary criteria to avoid the OAS clawback. Retiring in another country can be an incredible adventure, but meticulous planning is essential to make the most of your benefits and avoid costly mistakes. Whether you choose to explore new horizons or stay in Canada, thorough research and consultation with a cross-border professional like an accountant or an investment advisor or portfolio manager are critical. Did you know that navigating the uncertainties of the markets and your finances is generally smoother with the guidance of an investment advisor or portfolio manager? Studies have consistently shown that individuals who work with investment advisors and portfolio managers tend to accumulate a net worth up to 3 times higher on average compared to those that go it alone. But that's not all. There's a significant impact on overall well-being, with those who seek professional advice exhibiting higher levels of happiness and lower anxiety. Do you want to know an easy way of identifying what kind of plan you have at work? Or maybe you want to check out my latest upload? Well, I've got everything all queued up and ready for you. Click here for more amazing financial insights. I'll be waiting. We'll see you soon.